Hi, I'm Parni Jaggi. Since we started with an analysis of the story Some Words with a Mummy, which is actually about an Egyptian mummy that was wrapped up hundreds of years back and is being unwrapped by a team of doctors. And this is a very, very interesting story by Edgar Allan Poe. And in this video, we're going to be looking at the story as a satire. How is the story Some Words with a Mummy a satire? By now, we know that it is a satirical short story by Poe and was first published in the American Review in 1845 and is actually well known for its representation of a revived Egyptian mummy. Now, the story is a satire of two things. Firstly, the popular interest in Egyptology, the study of ancient Egypt and mummies during the time when the story was written. People were really fond of this study, and there was a lot of curiosity about this study. Secondly, the prevailing thought, the contemporary, the modern present thought of that time, that in the West, humanity had reached the height of civilization and knowledge due to the scientific and industrial revolutions. So we see that it is satirical of these two things. First, the interest of people in Egyptology, and secondly, people thinking that we've reached the height of modernity and civilization. So let's look at the story as a satire of Egypt mania. Now, here, Poe is clearly poking fun at Egypt mania in the story. Now, what happened in the story is a group of men gather together in the middle of the night to examine a mummy for the sake of scientific discovery. Now, for them, it is an experiment, it is a scientific experiment, and during this examination, they actually act like a group of children who've actually got a new toy to play with. They poke, they prod the mummy just to see what happens. And this is evident when they decide to use electricity with that mummy without any reason. Now, the fact that this is going on at the doctor's private residence and is attended by his friends only, even though they do not have any kind of a medical expertise, actually indicates this fact that they are toying, playing with this idea of mummy. Now, although it seems in modern times counterproductive to conduct a serious examination in this kind of an atmosphere, a party-like atmosphere, it means this was commonly done at that time. And Poe is actually ridiculing, making fun of this kind of an approach of taking a mummy non-seriously. Now, the mummy is also a method of ridicule here, because the name itself of the mummy, right down to its name, Allan, is quite funny. Here in this story, the mummy is not at all scary. Like we watch horror movies, normally the mummy movies are the most horrible movies, ghost stories, ghost movies of the film industry. But here in this story, we find more humor than the fear or the scariness. And even the characters who are attending to this mummy do not react to it as such. So this is another device that Poe uses to attract the reader. Then we also look at the mummy getting up after the electric current, and then the mummy abuses these men, and the men apologize to the mummy. So it is all very funny. Then we have the story as a satire of science and knowledge. Now, in their discussion with Allan, these men attempt to exalt their time as one of the unprecedented knowledge and technology. Again and again, Allan is able to prove that technology in his time in Egypt was not inferior and often superior to the modern equivalents. So we see the narrator, who at first is presented as a very educated, intelligent man, is actually later revealed to be completely ignorant. He asks Allan a series of questions intended to prove that modern technology is superior, but every time he asks questions that ultimately support Alamistakio's argument. So he kind of loses his battle in every question and proves himself ignorant in front of Count Alamistakio. Even when one of the men tries to stop him and he suggests that he should consult historical texts before asking the questions, he continues doing it. So, for example, when the man mentions Ptolemy, the narrator's response is whoever Ptolemy is. So, in the end, I mean to say, the only reason the men can consider themselves the victors of the debate, almost in every discourse and discussions, these men, these doctors, lose their debates to Alamistakio. Alamistakio counters all their concepts, all their claims of the 19th century progress, and proves that his ancient Egyptian progress was much more. So this debate ends into the victory of the doctors and the team only because of one thing, and that is the cough drops. So this is quite humorous that the cough drops of the 19th century prove to be the only thing which lead to the victory of the 19th century doctors and scientists. All the other things go in favor of this Egyptian mummy Alamistakio. So we see that it is a satire in more than one way, and Poe has very intriguingly, kind of ensnared the reader with his craft of storytelling, which has been beautifully crafted and woven in the form of a mummy who was inside the coffin, but once it is taken out, it speaks, it discusses, it wears clothes, it takes wine, and even it wins over the debates with these scientists and doctors of the 19th century. So this was a detailed analysis, synopsis, satirical analysis of the short story Some Words with a Mummy. I hope you all enjoyed this story with me. Stay tuned for the next stories and next videos. Thank you for now.